Okay, I'm letting everybody in. Oh, they're coming.
It's funny how everybody's stuck at home, but it's still hard to keep track of time. It's harder than it's ever been for me to keep track of time. Last Friday, I got up and I said, I forgot to do my laundry on Friday. And then I realized it was Friday. Okay, so I thought it was Saturday. What did I know? Yeah. It's hard to keep track of the days. I know not so much for you guys. You have so many events you're doing, but you know.
Look at you all. It's so nice to see you guys.
Hi.
Looking good, Beth.
It's afternoon, right? Not yet? Oh, it's still morning.
I was just saying it's hard to keep track of time.
And what day is it?
Yeah, it's the same thing for me. I forget which day of the week it is.
Every day Saturday.
If I were doing this today, I wouldn't know what day of the week it is.
So thank you for putting these on. I love having something to put on my calendar. I never thought I'd be so excited to have an appointment on a calendar before. It makes me happy.
Okay, we can get started now.
All right. Well, welcome to our Successful Women in Business first virtual lunch. I wonder, do you guys have lunch with you? Are you going to be eating while we have our meeting? Let's see. Nancy's got a protein bar. What is that? Fig bar. Very nice. Very nice. But, you know, there are the rules when it comes to Zoom, and you're not supposed to eat, but this is a SWIB lunch, and you're welcome to eat. So I'm giving everyone the authority to just stuff their faces while we're meeting today. I'm Sarah Pearson. I am with the Boca Chamber, and I'm mostly excited about this event than I've been with other events, because this is the event where I feel like we're all kind of family, and it's nice to see some familiar faces and just kind of getting somewhat back to normal with our monthly SWIB events. So it's good to see you all here. I want to recognize the sponsors of this event. If you don't mind switching to the next slide, they will be on your screen. But these are the businesses that have sponsored and been a part of SWIB, you know, since the beginning. So I do want to recognize them. Some of them are extremely busy right now, especially the medical facilities. So our Ruby sponsors are Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital, Hospice of Palm Beach County, well, we'll just say Trust Bridge at this point, West Boca Medical Center. Our Sapphire sponsors, Bell Rock Capital. We just had Jackie speak yesterday. It was an amazing webinar. She's a very, very smart person, I must say. Our Center State Bank is a sponsor. Florida Blue, we had somebody with Florida Blue, thanks to the help of Beth, speak at a seminar on Monday with mental health. We appreciate that. Northwestern Mutual and Toshiba. So I don't know if you guys know, you can click in the reactions in your box and give them all a round of applause. There's a thumbs up and an applause. So let's give them a round of applause. I'm going to pass this quickly to Chastity to tell us, you know, how this process is going to work. And then I'm going to go right into introducing our speaker, Penny, and we'll get going. So Miss Chas.
Hey guys, welcome to our virtual SWIB brought to you by the Boca Chamber. Just a little quick, if you want to have a reaction, like you want to give Penny a thumbs up or a clap, if you like something that she says, just go to your little reactions icon at the bottom of your screen and give her that shout out. If you have any questions, you can direct them to me in your chat box. So in the bottom, you have a little chat icon that says chat, just click in it, and you can submit your questions to either me personally or to everyone. And so this actual event is being recorded. So you will be able to see this event again on our YouTube channel and our playlist. And at the end of this, you'll get a thank you note with a copy of Penny's slides and a list of everybody who attended as a virtual business card. So that way you guys can connect together and create your own one-on-one Zoom. So enjoy the presentation. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. All right. So it is a pleasure to introduce Penny. I've known Penny since I came to Boca, I've always been very impressed with Penny's background. The title or the bio I'm going to read does not cover one thing, so I'm going to put that in there at the end. So, but Penny Mori, Managing Director of Remarkable HR. She's the founder, again, and managing director. She is an award-winning human resource consultant, a popular speaker, a published writer, and a source of timely, practical, employment-related advice for businesses on entrepreneur.com. During her 25 plus years in business, she's been the highest level woman executive in enterprises ranging from high technology startups to billion-dollar manufacturing operations. She has founded 4 successful human resource consulting practices, 1 in Boston, 1 in Detroit, and 2 in South Florida. She also headed a nationwide human capital advisory and recruiting practice for CBiz, a large publicly traded business consulting company, where she was named Business Leader of the Year in 2006 and graced the cover of the annual report. Remarkable HR focuses on finding the best talent for its clients and helps small businesses to properly hire, manage, and keep great employees. So 2 things. She graced the cover of the annual report. And when I hear the word grace, I think of Penny Mori. She's very poised, very proper, very, very just beautiful to watch. So I'm excited to watch her via Zoom. And another thing that I was just so impressed with when I learned about Penny was her experience in the automotive industry, which is very much a man, a lot of men are in that industry. And I do hope, Penny, that you'll share a little bit of your experience as the head of HR for such a male-dominated industry back in the day. So without further ado, Miss Penny Mori. Thank you.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Sarah. Oh, my heavens, that was so lovely to hear. I know I'm looking around who could be talking about. I will mention it was interesting to head up HR for Mazda Corporation, which was affiliated with Ford, primarily because they had never had a woman executive in the company in its entire history. Women were not even allowed in the plant. They were only allowed to work in office jobs, and they were called office flowers. So that gives you an idea of how archaic it was and how we had to function. And I put together a group of automotive people that were in human resources: Ford, Chrysler, GM, Toyota, Nissan, Honda, etc. And it was interesting because the people from Honda specifically said to me, how could you be the head of HR when you're a female? How could that be? They had never seen it and they were amazed by it. But it turns out it worked out really well. So I think Mazda would say that. So without further ado, if we can go to the next slide. I want to mention the confusion that exists right now because we'd be remiss if we felt as though we had clarity. During this presentation, I put most of the verbiage on the screen because I feel that you may want to refer to it later or even share it with other people. And I felt the more I included, the better. I also included some humor in here because I think we can all use a little humor. And then it closes with something very touching. I hope you'll stay around for that. But in the meantime, what we're dealing with right now is confusion. We're doing our best. We're watching the news. We're reading the newspaper. We're going online, however we get our information. But this is unprecedented bunkering of almost 330 million people in the US. Next slide. So what are the employers' concerns? As you know, my company helps employers. So what exactly is the end game? All of them are wondering. There isn't anyone who has an answer. No one has an answer. And these are things we've never experienced before. And the reason I mention that specifically is that in employment law, a lot of the things that I'm asked about, I have precedents that I can guide myself by. In other words, in addition to the laws and then the regulations, we look at court cases. How have these things been implemented? What have been the things that were challenged and what were the outcomes? Well, we don't have any precedents to guide us right now. I've had employers calling me about some of the new laws and saying, what if I do this, what will happen? And I'm afraid I have to say to many of them, we're not really sure right now. We're all seeking answers, all of us. What's going on and what will the outcome be for the longer term? Next slide. So what's our current reality? Well, these are first-time issues. We're going to cover those today. We're going to cover what we re-examined because of the pandemic. What have we learned, or what have we taken a fresh perspective about while we're hunkering down and doing our business as best we can? One of the things that I think is great is the Chamber of Commerce has really stepped up and offered all of these great online speakers and programs, which they offered tons of events regardless, but I think they've really re-examined what they're doing for the time being to be even more helpful to those of us stuck at home who don't know what time of day it is or what day of the week it is. So very helpful. They help to keep us structured. And as the restrictions on congregating ease, okay, what are we going to see? So these are the things we're going to cover today. Next slide. So we're all inundated with information, and even in the newspaper today, and yes, I'm one of those archaic human beings that reads the newspaper, it was mentioned that the information we're getting is not just daily, it's minute by minute. And from my perspective, we're dealing with more bad news than good news, and I think that can be wearing. Next slide. If you're single and at home alone, you may be feeling isolated or lonely, like Eleanor Rigby here. And if you don't know who Eleanor Rigby is, you were so far pre-Beatles that you don't know who the Beatles are. So if you're feeling lonely, get out some music from the Beatles, go online, and they'll cheer you up. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is one. Next slide. So interestingly, if you're married, you may be revisiting that decision. Divorce lawyers are preparing to handle a plethora of filings, similar to when the recession ended. And I don't know how many of you were aware, but when the recession ended, a lot of couples who really couldn't afford to divorce during the recession immediately divorced after the recession. Many divorce lawyers are saying that's what's going to happen here this time. And people are cooped up, unable to get away from each other, and maybe for the first time getting to really know each other. Their busy lives are no longer the way they were. So that's the current reality. Next slide. And got in my domestic violence slide. I know that I do an entire presentation on domestic violence and how it affects the workplace. But the truth is, this is worldwide. The domestic violence increase during the pandemic is worldwide. So it's something that is a very sad effect in the entire world. I was listening to a program about it just yesterday, and it's very sad, but it is the case. Next slide. And if you have children and are trying to work from home, well, this may be your current reality. I talked to a young woman yesterday who has a son, and she says, I am so over homeschooling. I am so over it. She said, at first it was kind of like interesting, but now I really am over it. Next slide. I happen to have 2 pugs in my office, even as we speak, and they try to help out, but they don't have much staying power. Next slide. Okay, if you have a business partnership, this is another thing that is happening. Business partners, the stress, the pressure of what's going on with their business at this point, businesses are breaking up or getting prepared to break up. And commercial litigation attorneys are preparing to assist with these issues. So the attorneys are getting ready to be helpful. And this is another breakup caused by, regarding this, not like the marriage breakups that are because people are crammed into a space and not able to get away from one another, but because they've got new pressures they've never had to deal with and are perhaps not working things out, maybe pointing the finger and the blame game going on. Next slide. Now, if you were laid off, which is the same as being fired, it's just a nice term for fired, It usually means when you're laid off that it's no fault of your own. You weren't fired for cause, you weren't fired for misbehavior or bad performance. You were laid off because the business couldn't use you at this point in time. Furloughed employees are those who are out of work but may be able to continue their benefits packages while they're out, and most likely will be called to work as soon as the business can afford it. A lot of employers will be facing EEOC pitfalls when they recall workers. I hate to say it, but some businesses have looked at this as a way to get rid of deadwood. In other words, we lay everybody off, but when we bring people back, we only bring back the people we like. Maybe they are liked for good reason. Maybe they're their best performers or whatever. But one always has to look at what the impact is regarding EEOC. Are they only recalling Caucasians? Are they only recalling males? Are they only recalling the non-disabled? Are they only recalling certain religious backgrounds? Anything protected under Title VII, one must look at it when doing the recall. If you don't, you will be sued. There will be claims brought through the EEOC, and there are civil rights attorneys already on top of this, and they're looking at it. So if you're an employer and you laid off people, our furloughed employees, take a look at how you're recalling them. You should recall them based on keeping your workforce mix maximized regarding equal employment opportunity. Okay, next slide. Now, if you own or operate a business, you may be trying to navigate the new governmental aid programs, SBA loans that might become grants. They're wonderful. If you can get your application in and have it considered, some banks will only serve current loan customers. Some started out that way and then revisited that policy. Others are tapped out. They say, you know, we'd help you if we could, but we've loaned all we can risk. So small businesses that hesitated may not be able to get the loans that might become grants that they had hoped for, or just might find it a lot more difficult than they had anticipated. And that is a current reality for many small businesses. Next slide. And a lot of people, a lot of companies are navigating the new payroll protection program. I have found such good information on that program. I was kind of surprised. There is there's a great poster on the Families First Corona Response Act that tells all the different reasons why you can get that coverage. So go to these websites if you're interested in the payroll protection program to see what the deal is. You could not apply until April 3rd, but companies and nonprofits, I think it was April 10th, but the point is the same. If you haven't looked into it and you do have employees, it's a wonderful thing. Most people I've talked to, most of my clients took advantage of it immediately, but if you haven't, something to visit. And these are the websites. Thanks. Next slide. I'm not a commercial real estate person, and there are so many great experts out there. But if you're renting business space, you own a business, and you're in the midst of what's going on now, and you see the empty office at the left and the empty store at the right, you may be trying to work out how you disengage from a lease that was based on a wonderful economy, one of the best economies we had in a very long time, with the lowest unemployment rate in decades. And so with a positive outlook, you may have leased more space than you even needed, looking ahead to the future. And now, what do you do? How do you get a workout? So again, I'm not the expert on this, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Next slide. Now, I found this interesting. Florida has more than 41 essential services. A lot of states don't have that many. And among ours are the sales of alcohol and the sales of firearms. Now, the reason I found that interesting is I thought that was a great combination. Everybody can get drunk and shoot each other. I thought that was a great combination. So next slide. Luckily, law enforcement, medical services, And mortuaries are also essential businesses. So we'll all work out just fine. If everybody gets drunk and starts shooting people, we'll get through it, because we will have our policemen on top of it, our medical services, and ultimately, if it doesn't work out exactly the way we hope, the mortuary. Next slide. Now, interestingly, there are essential services that are getting too little business. So even though they're essential, look at gas stations. And this is a typical one. You drive right past it every day on Federal Highway, and it's empty now because people aren't driving to work. So why would they need gasoline, right? So the gas stations are sitting there pretty empty. And another one of our new and used car dealerships, look at those. That's a typical one. It's one that I use. Empty. And they're stepping up. Some are disinfecting cars free of charge, which I think is lovely, a lovely thing to do. Others are saying we will deliver your new car to your door. We'll do it all online and deliver your new car to your door. But still, sales are way, way down. Maybe it's a great time to buy a car. I've read some wonderful deals, no payments for the first 3 months, 0 interest for 7 years, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe this is the time we should be looking at that. Not saying we should or shouldn't, but it's something to think about. And other kinds of businesses that are able to stay open, they're essential, but not many taxi services needed, Uber, Lyft, limousines, the commuting trains, just not needed. And again, with laundry, mostly dry cleaning, we all are not wearing our business suits every day, so the dry cleaning isn't as extensive. So they're open for business perhaps, but not very busy. Next slide. Now, some essential services are as profitable as ever, in some cases even more so, which is interesting. Pool supplies, which I had not thought of, but one of my clients is a pool supplies wholesaler with lots and lots of outlets and delivery and everything. And they mentioned to me they're busier than ever because so many people with backyard pools are making sure they're maintained properly, so that, because it's the only entertainment. The public pools are closed, the beaches are closed. So because in this particular situation, people want to make sure their pools are clean and safe, they're busier than ever and fully engaged. And of course, the companies that produce, and I have a nephew up in New York State who works at a paper manufacturing company that they produce toilet paper, paper towels, et cetera, and they are running 24/7, busier than ever. Obviously, cleaning, disinfecting products, medical supplies, all of these are busier than ever. And I'd love to see the drive-in movies come back. For many of you, you may have never been to a drive-in movie. When I was small, that was something that our family did from time to time. So I'm glad to see those back. It's interesting. And they're using them for church services too, which is a new use as far as I know. And of course, the gun, liquor, and wine stores are open. Next slide. Now, this is something I think I mentioned the Chamber's offering a lot. A friend of mine, Laura Ernest, who's with Lang Realty, was telling me that Lang always offers tons and tons. I'm not promoting Lang over others, but she told me they offer tons and tons of training all the time, online training. But she says this is the first time since she's been working with them that she could really take the time to take full advantage of all of these programs. And I said, wow, that is so smart to use this time to hone your skills, to improve your skills. So when real estate becomes as busy as it formerly was, you are really up to speed. Smart. Next slide. And the industrious among us are catching up on organizing our files, records, and so forth. Our current reality is we have no excuse not to clean up our home offices, our homes, our attics, our garages, etc., as depressing as it may be. Now, I've heard from people that do this that they feel wonderful about it later, if that's any help to any of you. Next slide. We all miss, our current reality is we all miss our lunches with the ladies, our massage, beauty, nail salons. I myself am missing that stuff big time. Retail stores, town centers closed tighter than a drum, and probably will be one of the later ones to reopen. I've been reading they're opening some of the small retail stores in some cities, but probably the big malls not so much for a while. And we miss our art shows, our music, our dance, our concerts. We're missing all that. So that's our current reality. And I think it's pretty tough on all of us. Next slide. So for some, businesses are simply closing their doors. And again, referring to the RIF, which is reduction in force, they are facing for the first time having to tell employees, in many cases virtually, that they will no longer be employed. And this is a huge issue. Many employers have told me this was the hardest thing they've ever had to do, because firing an employee for cause is totally different. Somebody didn't come to work, didn't perform their role, was difficult to work with. It doesn't feel the same as when you're telling a wonderful employee that through no fault of their own, they are losing their job at this point. Next slide. Here's some important statistics. I've looked at a lot of graphs before I put this together, and this one I thought was one of the more meaningful because it shows you the percentage of jobs that are low wage that are being cut. And the reason that's so important to us is that low wage means these are food and drink workers, retail, etc., where these people may live paycheck to paycheck a bit more than some others. And that's why these jobs being cut, 37 million US jobs at risk. That's scary. It's a scary statistic for all of us because these people have to put food on their tables. And right now, I know we've got some programs increasing unemployment rates, federal government's pitching in, et cetera, but still, this is a scary, scary chart. Next slide. So again, policies that companies have and need, they need to have them in place. They shouldn't wait until they're told they can reopen to have in place what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, so it's defensible and explainable to their employees. Next slide. Now, for some essential services, we talked about them being allowed or even required to stay open. Employers, for the first time, have had to deal with telling an employee that wants to come to work, you really can't because of underlying health issues. I'm looking at you and I have to tell you, you look particularly vulnerable to me. Now, I had clients call me and say, can I do that? And I said, yes. I looked into it and you can. Again, that's not something an employer wants to do, but neither does an employer want to have an employee come to work who's particularly at risk. And another issue they're dealing with are employees that are too ill to come to work. These are, again, businesses that are required to stay open or allowed to stay open. Amazon has hired thousands and thousands of workers, trying to keep it at a point where people aren't working 12 and 15-hour shifts, trying to keep up with the flow of goods to the American public. And we have employees that are too ill to work or they're testing positive. And that cuts down the number of people that can come to work for essential services. Employers are dealing with that. Next slide. And then, of course, there are employees who could work, but they're frightened. And it's kind of hard to blame them because the hype is frightening. I'm not saying the hype isn't true. I'm just saying the statistics are frightening regarding deaths. And it's surprising how many are in the younger ages, 40 to 50. Huge numbers compared to what we thought. I keep reading, it's the older people that are most at risk, but when we look at the actual statistics, it's the middle area of the age range of employment that's being most affected regarding deaths. Employees who would work, but they're having to provide their own childcare. Daycare centers are closed or cutting way, way back on what they can take because of social distancing. Senior care, you may have a senior in your life who was getting visitors every day from home health care agencies or whatever, who have had to cut back for whatever reason due to the pandemic. And now I'd like to go to work. I'd like to be there. My company is open, but who's going to take care of dad? So these are other realities that employers are having to face. And people can apply under the, I had mentioned the Family First, and they can apply under that. There are 6 different reasons they can apply for paid family medical leave now. Next slide. What are the new realities for employers? Well, first of all, I think many employers have discovered how many jobs in their workplace could be done from home if they had only figured out how to manage it and how to make the most of it and put the policies in place. I'm being honest with you when I tell you that a lot of my clients, I do handbooks for tons of companies, and a number of them, a good number, when I put in the telecommuting policy, they say, oh no, we don't want that. We don't want people to think we would allow them to ever work from home under any circumstances. Well, of course, that's changed. I do have a policy that I promote. It's pretty extensive. I require a signed agreement. What is the work to be done? Maybe you attach the job description. Maybe you put in goals. Maybe you put in how many hours a day or how many days a week can be worked from home, what technology requirements you have in place, and how your time will be reported if it's a non-exempt job. So these are things that employers could put into place and relieve themselves of a huge amount of overhead, which I'm going to cover just a bit later. Next slide. So what did companies need to do about external access? Well, security remains a huge consideration, and all companies should seek expert advice. Some have it, so that's terrific. But a lot of smaller companies don't necessarily use an expert for their technology, and this is one time when they need to step up and get that expert assistance and provide all their remote employees with specific instructions. What is the equipment, the functionality, and how do we maintain security during this very difficult time? I was interested when everybody first started working from home, people were thinking there wouldn't be enough bandwidth, they wouldn't be able to get their work done, and how smoothly it has gone relatively in this situation that we find ourselves. Next slide. Okay, some more humor. Where did that go? I wasn't ready to move. Can you go back? Oh, thank you, thank you. I'm not sure who's doing it, but thank you. Again, even after the pandemic, even during this pandemic, I should say, companies still said, well, give me what temporary telecommuting policies. I don't, again, want people to think that once the pandemic is over, they will ever be allowed to work from home again. So I'm saying, as Dilbert would say, it's sometimes beyond the grasp of employers. Next slide. So here are the statistics. Telework Research Network has determined that $10,000 a year per employee can be saved by allowing people to work from home just half the time. It doesn't have to be a full-time thing. It can be 2.5 days a week. And this is the savings, $1 million a year for 100 employees working half-time from home. And one of the things, when I was at CBIZ, the reason my division was so much more profitable than any other division is that I utilized people working from home offices, primarily. I had a few people in offices in New York and Chicago and Los Angeles that were in CBIZ offices, but the huge majority worked from home offices, which meant the office overhead for rent, utilities, equipment, phones, landlines, printers, copiers, office supplies, they were all reduced to almost nothing. So the profitability was huge. And plus, I know that this may not be a popular viewpoint, but having worked in corporate America for so many years, I can tell you there's a lot of wasted time due to chats that have nothing to do with what's going on in the business world. And whereas they may be enjoyable, sometimes they can cause a huge loss, and people using the time that they're supposed to be at work on other kinds of matters. So it really only makes sense to consider some jobs being home-based at least part of the time. That's the employment reality. Next slide. Now, this statistic has changed since I put this statistic of 17 million US workers laid off. As of today, it's 22 million workers laid off in the United States. And as we all know, 77,000 are being laid off from Walt Disney World here in Florida this week. Another 77,000 hit the bricks, as they say. So the 10% being unemployed. That was last week. It's a higher percentage this week. None of that bodes well for the economy in the United States. Another reality, employers are cutting pay. Even the people that they're keeping on, they're saying, look, you're just going to have to take a pay cut in order for us to keep as many people employed as we can. Not a welcome situation. Still, it's the reality. And that's what this is entitled, the employment reality. Next slide. Another impact of the pandemic is that up to 35 million Americans can lose their health insurance in the coming weeks. Businesses continue to lay off workers, and those workers lose their health insurance and have to figure out a new way to get insurance. This is not the time to be without health insurance, right? Due to a pandemic, we certainly don't want to be without our health insurance. Next slide. So what are we going to see? We could see up to 40 million people in the United States being uninsured regarding medical. And that's the highest level since the Affordable Care Act. You may not be a fan of the Affordable Care Act, but many more people became insured because of it. And that's just a fact. Now, up to 23 million Americans could enroll in Medicaid because they now qualify when maybe they didn't before, but that still leaves 5 million Americans that would be uninsured. Some furloughed employees may be able to keep their medical insurance, but very often the companies require them to pay their portion of the premiums, and that may not be something they can do without a paycheck. Okay, next slide. Laid off employees should look into whether their spouse has a plan that they can join, because even though it's not an open enrollment period, which it's been discussed having an open enrollment period because of the pandemic, but it has not been finalized as something available. But it's a life-changing event for a spouse to lose their job. So even though you may have both carried your own coverage, because one loses their job, they can go on to the spouse's plan, and it's an event that qualifies. They could sign up for COBRA, and most companies offer this exact same plan. They were able to be covered when they were an employee, or a less expensive plan that may have a bigger deductible or whatever, but the goal would be to have coverage. They can see if Medicaid is an option, again, because of their changed circumstances. They didn't qualify for Medicaid before the pandemic, but having lost their job, now they do. And they can look into the health insurance marketplace and see if they can get their own plan. So these are some things they can do. Next slide. So what have we re-examined? What are the truly indispensable group activities, for instance, for our business prosperity? Can we do less in person? I think we all enjoy the mixers and the opportunity to get out and talk to people face to face. I certainly miss it. I'm pretty sure a lot of you miss it, but a lot can be done through things like LinkedIn. There are 1.5 million groups on LinkedIn, and we're utilizing those so much more during the pandemic, and we're finding how much more we can use LinkedIn than maybe we ever did before, because we really did enjoy being out and about and meeting each other in person. But now we have the time, again, like my friend Laura, using the time to get up to speed with all these webinars her company offers. We can use this time to get really adroit regarding using LinkedIn to promote our business. If we weren't already doing it, if we weren't already optimizing those opportunities, now's the time to figure out how to do that. So that's not necessarily a bad outcome. Next slide. And are there better ways to connect and conduct our businesses? For instance, my friend Michelle McLean is hosting free online chats with experts on a variety of subjects, and not long ones. I like you, it's hard to carve out time all day long, but these are about a half hour each, and I found them just entertaining enough and short enough that I could really enjoy them. So something to think about for all of us going forward. Next slide. More humor. You can tell Dilbert's one of my favorites. Can business meetings be conducted virtually? Well, we're doing it right now. So yes. Next slide. So rise of telemedicine. This is huge because it's been around, it's been available, but it's been lingering, as it says, on the sidelines. It's not been our go-to. We go to the minute clinics, we go to the emergency room, we go to our primary care physicians, of course. But telemedicine was never as popular as it has become due to the pandemic. Next slide. What are the advantages of telemedicine? First of all, it's less expensive for the patients. It's less expensive for the physicians to deliver the services. It's convenient. It can be arranged and done remotely without having to, as I said, keeping sick people out of the transit system. People aren't having to get dressed and get transportation to get to a waiting room, to be around other people who are ill. If they're vulnerable, that's not the best place to be. I always used to say the last place you want to be if you're sick is an emergency room, because you're being exposed to all kinds of things, some of which you may not have any resistance to. So, and most importantly, I think it gives doctors more time to provide the critical care to people who really need the in-person care because they're getting so much handled remotely. Next slide. This is an opportunity, from my perspective, as a woman who raised a family as a single mother, primarily throughout. Daycare was one of the biggest problems. And for those of you who never had that problem, I'm happy for you. Maybe you had family members that helped or whatever. But for many of us, and this cartoon is simply true, goodbye to 35% of a woman's income when she has a child. And 71% of families spend at least 10% of their total annual pre-tax income on childcare, which is huge. And a nanny caring for a child, just one child, can be $40,000 a year and more. And I've worked for clients who were high net worth individuals whose nannies, you know, got a car and a spending allowance and were paid $60,000, $70,000 a year. And that was what they were able to do, so they did that. But many of us cannot afford daycare, and many women don't go to work because they can't afford daycare. And this is our chance. We can do something different, something better for women. And I say women because primarily they are the care providers. Next slide. Here are some companies that offer family care solutions on site. These are pretty big names, and they do this because there are good business reasons to do it. Next slide. I thought this was interesting. My daughter happens to live in Vermont, doesn't happen to have a child, so we don't worry about that. But some governmental agencies in Arizona and Vermont are allowing parents to bring babies up to 6 months old into the workplace. And it's working out. So what did we know? Next slide. What are the advantages to having on-site childcare? And by the way, 100 years ago when I worked in Boston, some of the companies started offering on-site childcare benefits and found huge advantages. And here they are, they're listed here. They have found they have an access to a larger talent pool. All those women that couldn't come to work, I should say, because of the cost of childcare, can now come to work. And they have a loyalty to the company. The last one says longer tenure, less turnover. They have a loyalty to a company who offers them this benefit, even after they don't need to use the benefit anymore. Their memories are a little longer than that, and they remember when they did have to use that benefit and how important it was to them. More women will be in management because they will be able to come to work and move up the ladder. The company gets tax credits, which is nice to have. And these companies have discovered there's lower absenteeism because parents aren't always having to be at home to take care of a childcare situation. And there's better employee performance overall. These are pretty big advantages. So this is our opportunity to think about these things, to think about business in a new light. Next slide. What could we do? Well, proposal on some people is the paid family and medical leave being a universal family care program. You know, young woman who lived with me while she got her college degree lives in Canada, and she got a year off with pay when she had a baby. I couldn't even believe it. That's what they do. But we could do more than we do. We could do more than 12 unpaid weeks when someone has a baby or adopts a baby or needs to stay home with someone in their family who's critically ill. We could have a federal fund and we all contribute to it. Some states are already stepping up. I've listed the states that as of right now have paid family medical leave. It isn't as extensive as it might need to be, but it's something. The District of Columbia also offers paid family medical leave. So something to think about that could come out of this that would be an opportunity to do something different going forward. Next slide. Obviously, we're going to use technology more. 5G is allowing people that work from home to get faster connection speeds and be able to work so efficiently and effectively. So we're going to see that. This is our opportunity to realize how technology has changed how we get the work done. Next slide. And businesses over the years have become more dependent on technology. I was amazed at how many real estate agents are offering. I know the online tours are a promotional tool. I've seen them for years. We all have, and they're wonderful. They showing the properties inside and out virtually. It's wonderful. But now they're doing home appraisals virtually, and notarization can be done virtually. Documents can be signed virtually. So those closings that we all may not have enjoyed as much as we might have thought we would can be done remotely and be huge time savers for so many people. So I think that's exciting to use technology to cut down on how long it takes to find a new property and buy that new property. It's exciting to me. Next slide. Well, the New York Stock Exchange, closed the floor. That's what it looks like without all those traders shouting and carrying on there. Now, will it change the way it functions forever? To some degree, it may. They may be finding out how much can be done with electronic trading only. So this is something that may happen of using technology more. Next slide. I'm not an educator, but I think we can all agree that education has changed forever because of the pandemic. Do we really need to continue building huge educational buildings and expending millions of dollars to operate these? I mean, they're building a huge new middle school across from my complex, huge. And I'm just saying to myself, really, knowing how much could be done from home, do we really need these huge? And by the way, you're reading online about college students saying, I'm not going to go to this school where I was paying so much for the experience of being on campus. The campus is beautiful. I was willing to do this when I can really get the same education through remote learning. My niece is an architect in Boston. She teaches at Boston University, and she didn't believe she could teach architecture remotely, but she took 3 courses offered by the university and began doing it, and it's going extremely well. She misses seeing her students in person, but she says, really, we could do at least half of the classes remotely if we wanted to. So remote learning, which was not as prevalent as it is right now, may be a lot more prevalent going forward. Again, not an educator, but it is an opportunity to think about these things. Next slide. So we know as the restrictions ease, we're going to see some businesses that will never come back. They will have simply disappeared. However, others may rebound, and we will have to be really aware how to support them, because when they start poking their head back up and saying we're coming back, we all need to do our best to support those that are trying to resurface. Next slide. Sorry, just one second. Sorry about that. It keeps ringing for some reason. Now, again, we're going back to that some employers may offer jobs back, but at lower pay rates. That's a legal thing they can do. They can simply say, yes, we'll hire you back, but we're not going to pay you at the same level we did before, because we can't. Not because we don't care about you, not because we don't think you're wonderful, not because we don't think you're worth more. We are in a different situation than we were when we hired you previously, and this will be the deal. Take it or leave it. And the same is true about benefits. Since the recession, I've been working with employers to build up their benefits packages, offer more than they could during the recession, become an employer of choice. However, this situation where they have not been in business for weeks, maybe it could be months, they will begin cutting benefits, which again, they can do. The things that they offered previously, that doesn't mean they have to offer them. And they will be cutting benefits in order to keep the maximum number of people employed that they can keep employed. So that's a side effect that we will be seeing. That's all I can say. And it's unfortunate. Next slide. Some people will have to get better at using technology. They will need better technology, better computers, better monitors, cameras for the first time, better internet access speed. What they used to do their Facebook or to communicate with their relatives is very different than what they need for working from home. And they're discovering this. Their security needs to be heightened. Maybe they need a better home office space where they're not exposed to as many sounds and interruptions. And they will have to perhaps pick up new skills. And that will be hard for some people, but that will be the new reality. Next slide. There will be new entrepreneurial ventures. Out of things like recessions and what's this pandemic is causing, which is more than a recession, new businesses will arise. Next slide. And I love this saying, entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so that you can live the rest of your life like most people can't. I love that saying. And I think, next slide, women entrepreneurs. This is, if you ever saw the play Annie Get Your Gun, it's on Broadway for many years. Annie Oakley, there's a song in it called Anything You Can Do, I Can Do Better. And it's a funny song. But here are 10 reasons why women are better entrepreneurs. And I think that's true. They're more honest, value relationships more, they appreciate creativity, they're direct regarding their communication, they're fair negotiators. I took a course years ago when I was negotiating with the Teamsters in the UAW at Harvard about negotiating. And there were so many men in the course who didn't understand the idea of compromise. Everything had to be their way or nothing at all. And they needed to be there a lot more than the women in the course. Women are more emotionally intelligent. They're hyper aware, more ambitious, less ego blindness, and they're calculated risk takers. So I felt we should share why women are better entrepreneurs, seeing how this is successful women in business. I asked Chastity ahead of time, will this be successful women in business? Because this slide might not be as popular with others. Next slide. So what can we hope to see? And hope is a big word here. Mark Cuban said that in every startup, every company, he believes every employee should have stock and ownership in their company. And companies coming back into business could share the risk and the wealth by opening it up to employee ownership. Welcome to employee ownership. Doesn't it make sense? If they had been in this situation before the pandemic, they might have survived it better. And it's something to think about going forward. Next slide. So maybe the biggest pandemic takeaway is just, instead of asking, is there a reason to do this online? We will be asking, is there a good reason to do it in person? Couldn't we do it online? Next slide. And we know not every job can be done remotely. We know that. But many people are discovering, due to the pandemic, the difference between having to put on a suit, next slide, and commuting, and by the way, that is I-95 you're looking at, And commuting for an hour or more and working efficiently from home was maybe always just the ability to download an app or two and get permission from their boss to do so. Next slide. You know now, Dilbert is one of my favorites. And this is one of the reasons why. Next slide. So when we are able to get together, we don't know. But what we've discovered is that from commonplace office jobs to education to telemedicine, how we get things done has changed potentially forever. And the question will be, are we prepared? And I hope you can't hear my pug dog snoring in the background. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Next slide. So what's the best advice coming out of this? Well, a lot of leadership will be needed. And I'm advising employers right now, revisit your business model, employment policies, practices now. Don't wait. Do it now while things are slower than they have been for many. And look at your business operations. What realistically can be changed to be more efficient, more effective, more cost effective, and more profitable? What did we learn from this? Next slide. I appreciate everybody's attention and for tolerating my pug dog snoring during my presentation, which I apologize for. This is a lovely video. If you have the time, it only takes a few minutes. I think it's less than 3 minutes long. And I found it moving. My friend Michelle had sent it to me, and it's by Raya Soko. And thank you again for your attention, and enjoy this video.
Thank you for shaking us and showing us we are dependent on something much bigger than we think. Thank you for making us appreciate the luxury we lived in, abundance of products, freedom, health, and realizing we were taking it for granted. Thank you for stopping us, to make us see how lost we were in the busyness, not having time for the most basic things. Thank you for allowing us to put aside all our problems we thought were so important and showing us what is actually important. Thank you for stopping the transport. The earth was begging us to look at the pollution for a very long time. We didn't listen. Thank you for all the fear. It has been a global disease for years, but not many of us wanted to face it. And now we have to face it and learn how to embrace it with love and with the support of our community. Thank you for this reevaluation of our lives. Thank you as we finally understand what it means that we are all connected. Thank you for the unity between all of us. We knew the world has to change. Thank you for helping us to undermine everything and giving us a chance to build the world from the very beginning. This virus is part of us. It's between us, in us. It connected us all, either physically or energetically. Gratitude supports the immune system, but also lets us see things from many perspectives. And it's up to us which perspective we will choose, but best is to be aware of all of them.
I hope you all enjoyed that.
Thank you so much, Penny. We greatly appreciate it. I have a couple of questions. We're running a little out of time, but we have a couple of minutes for some questions. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box. One of the first questions was, and it was kind of going back into your slides, Penny, can you tell us how you think the business model will change moving forward from working in a brick and mortar building to working at home?
Well, I don't know how the commercial realtors are seeing it, but I can see offices rotating staff in their offices. In other words, instead of having 100 people on site every day, having a third of their workforce on site every day, and meaning that they'll come in and out of the workplace. So many meetings, so much can be done remotely now that I do believe that it's going to change. And I think that, you know, in this video, she mentioned stress. And I think it's going to reduce stress on the American worker if we do adopt more telemedicine, more education done remotely, and more workers able to get done from their home offices what they had to go into the office to do, because that was simply the model. Not because it was necessary, it was simply the model. That's how I believe it's going to change things.
Okay, the next question. Can you share info on, whoops, sorry. Hi, now I can see everybody. Can you share info on how employers can get people to come back to work when they should be at work? Some say they are afraid, but they brag they were able to go get their hair cut and have been spotted around town, but won't come to work. Most are the younger ones.
Well, the issue will be to simply say, if you don't come to work, we're not going to keep you employed. You will be one of the people that lose your jobs. I mean, I don't like to say that, but it's just simply the truth. An employer can say, if you don't come to work, I will fire you. Now, you hope that people come to work because they want to. You hope that they come to work because they know they can and they're needed. But on the other side of the coin, as you mentioned, there will be people that are seen about town doing what they want to do and saying, I'm not coming to work. So it's hard as an employer. Are they truly apprehensive? Are they truly afraid of going to work? Or is it that they simply don't want to? And there are some paid leave programs right now that are allowing them to take time off with pay by providing substantiation that they need to. So.
What do you think about individuals retraining themselves so it diversifies their career portfolio?
That's exactly, I mentioned that in one of the slides. I think now is the perfect time for people who are home and who want to come into a different environment, or maybe they're working at the job they were at, but they really would like a better job. I've never seen so many training programs offered online in my life. And so many of them are high quality. It doesn't make sense to me not to use them. Not all of them are high quality and not all of them may help you, but so many to choose from. So to look online and to see what's out there, I get 100 emails a day myself personally offering training and a plethora of training programs, lots of different subjects, etc. So now is the time, if people want to change careers, to try to get up to speed. And I also think, I just want to mention, with so much education now being offered online, people can go for those second degrees or degrees in different areas more easily than they ever could before. For many of us working all day, I mean, I got my second degree working a full-time job, and it was not easy to go to those classes every night after working a full day. But if we could have teleconferenced, wow, would that have been a wonderful thing. But I was 100 years ago, so no.
Your dog is hilarious. I'm trying to,
Oh, sorry.
because I don't think I've ever heard a dog snore so loud. It's so funny. Casey, you had a question, but I think it got mixed in with a bunch of others. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, it was related to that last question about retraining yourself. There is a lot of resources out there, so I didn't know if there were any recommended resources anyone had come across.
I won't speak for everyone. Anyone that has something to recommend. I think that it depends on the field you want to be in and what skills you think you need to hone. You may have had feedback in the past about skills you needed that you didn't have, and this would be the perfect time to sign in and take online courses in those areas. But I know, like I mentioned, a friend that's in realty. Do any of the others on the call have recommendations, maybe things they've seen that they think might be good things to take? Anybody?
If you have any information, you can raise your hand and we can select you.
Of course, we can always look at TED Talks. Those are great. Those are always interesting, and you can really get a lot of information from watching those. But I've been going online and simply putting in subjects and looking at what the training programs are in those areas. And there are just so many right now. It's one of the side effects that are actually positive for this pandemic situation. Yeah.
Awesome. Let me just see if there's one more. Angela from Manpower. Sorry, just jumps up. Manpower has a Power U platform that is free right now with thousands of courses.
Yeah, I've seen that, Angela. Yeah, that's one of the sites that I visited. Yeah, a lot of courses there, lots.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Penny. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. We actually had 1.5 men in this presentation join us, and one of them, I guess he figured that he was in the wrong room and he left. But thank you, ladies, so much for being here today. Look out for more virtual events brought to you by the Boca Chamber. Our Smart Talk for Women is coming up. Nancy's doing a double meeting with us today, well, this month. Nancy Prophet will be presenting on Friday. So look out for that information. She's going to teach us how to network during the, this corona.
That's great, Nancy.
Yes, absolutely. And then she'll be doing Smart Talk. So if you haven't checked out those events and registered yet, please do so now. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and have an amazing day.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Penny. See you tomorrow, Nancy.